Welcome to our greatest American art form.
The mixtape.
Now, for all of you kids who don't know,
Traditionally, a mixtape is a homemade compilation of media from multiple sources, recorded into a medium like a CD, a VHS, or cassette tape.
what we are presenting to you here is something we call mixtape therapy,
A collection of authentic conversations,
often wacky conversations,
inspired by what inspires us.
except instead of a cassette tape, we are bringing you a podcast
So just as you might share a mixtape, we share these conversations with you.
in the hopes that they spark a similar connection to the good old mixtape. Now, join us
for a little
for some
mixtape
mixtape therapy.
You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. I read one of those AI summaries. I didn't do your challenge. It might still happen, but that AI summary was thorough.
No shit. Like, I mean, it tells you stuff that
wild.
like you're like, whoa, we talked about that? Ooh. You know what I mean? Like Hannah's talking about how her boyfriend, blah, 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 whatever. You're like, hey, put I don't know about that part. Just like the part about the music and the song.
Wow.
All right, Hannah. Well, you're bringing it today. So like you brought a poem. So I'm super excited to hear what your thought process on it was.
Okay, so I brought today on Mixtape Therapy Wild Geese by Mary Oliver, who is just one of the best poets, or one of my favorite poets. And I'm not usually big on poetry that you feel like you have to decode. You know what I mean? Like, I think poetry is one of those things where, yeah, it can feel like so highbrow or like hoity-toity that you feel like you have to be more in your head to understand it. Whereas I feel like the whole point of poetry, for me anyway, is to transcend being in your head and to get to more of like what we call a poetic experience, right? Which we talk about a lot on the podcast, which is, it's not really about the cognitive explanation. It's just this feeling, or it reminds me of this, or it brings up this particular emotion for me. And her poetry for me really captures feelings, even though, if I were to like sit here and explain to you what this poem is about, I think it would mean maybe something different for everyone, which to me makes it kind of a great jumping off point for mixtape therapy. I wonder, Scottie, if I should just read it because it's short, and then
I think that would be cool. Like, yeah, to read it out, that'd be awesome.
From there. Okay. So, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. That's the poem. And I would love to get your just initial emotional reaction, Scottie. I know it's my thing and I'll talk about it, but I do just want to say, like, when you either read it first or heard it just now, what emotional state do you find yourself going into? And it's okay if like you don't like it.
Oh, no, I what I thought was my initial, what was so interesting was, okay, here's this poem basically about wild geese, right? That she's using this reference of wild geese, but like the majority of the poem's not about wild geese. The majority of the poem is about us and what we do in the world in the way that wild geese do something, that bears do something, that other, all of us do something inside this world. And wild geese they don't worry about like who's writing on their Facebook wall, or they don't worry about like all the other human things we worry about. They just worry about like loving what they love, doing what they do, going where they go. And you know in my feeling on it is that's what she was trying to get across, is that like we think we have all these things to bear and things we have to do and suffering we have to have, but like wild geese don't worry about like suffering, I don't think.
That we
I
know
mean,
of.
they could, I guess, but like, probably not. Like they just worry about being wild geese. And like, to the theme of my whole coaching, which is just be, like, the poem is kind of like, hey, like just be inside your body, be who
Mm,
you are. Don't put yourself through unnecessary suffering. Like it felt like it was a poem about how to be, like how to just
mm.
be as a human inside of all the things that happen in the world around us. So I don't know, that was my initial thought. Like what was why did you bring this to the table?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that, like like a lot of great art or poetry, all I can tell you is a feeling I get when reading it, more so than like, I brought this because X, Y, and Z. I think for me, this is just a poem that really resonates with me, especially the line, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. The soft wild animal. I want to make sure I'm getting it right. Yeah, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves, which I think is to me just the opposite of where and I feel like a lot of people spend their waking hours, which is much more in this, thinking and obsessing and perseverating and guilt and shame and like all these different kind of states of mind that are really the opposite of just be.
Well, it's like
Which, yeah,
the first two, there's two lines before that, right? The
yes, I
two
love
lines
that one.
before that are what are the two lines before that real quick, Hannah?
Yeah, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting, which is
Right.
definitely like a Christian reference, but
But also like to your point, it's like, like here's this really great line about like you just have to be inside your body. And it was led in with this really, I mean, for me, it was kind of like the beginning of the poem jolting off. It's like, like it's just going like right to it. Like you don't have to like suffer. You don't have to do these things. You just have to be inside your body. And I think the
mm,
setup of that was so that was interesting to me, because that the first two lines really caught my attention, and then it kind of it brought it back to this being of like you don't have to suffer, like you just have
mm.
to be inside your body, you know what I mean? And then the poem kind of flows through like that.
Right. I mean, it's so interesting though that the first line is you do not have to be good, right? Which I think there's so many ways that we can interpret that, but how it resonates with me is you don't have to be good in terms of the ideas of what it is to be a good person as perceived by others. And then it kind of goes into, walking on your knees in the desert, all of which are going into sort of the more puritanical, yes, Christian based, but I don't think it's fair to just say like to ascribe all of Christianity to the negative connotations of what she's saying, which is this more like, oh, I'm gonna kind of punish myself and I'm going to doubt myself and I'm going to make sure that everyone sees that I'm a good person by doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. Like I really want people to see that I'm good, that I'm humble, but it's more from the standpoint of I need to do things by these set of rules that have been ascribed. Right, coming from really just the opposite place from being in your body. I think of this as being very in your head and being very kind of neurotic and analytical and like really this being more about how you are perceived by others, at least. When I think of like doing penance in the like traditional Catholic sense of the word. I grew up Catholic, which was very much like, I know there are some people who do it in a way that feels like true and resonant to them and authentic to them, which is that, they're doing some kind of worshipful act. But I know so much of what I experienced in Catholicism and Christianity was like displaying or showing things to other people. Like, look at me, I'm going to confession. Look at me, I'm saying my prayers. And it all being very much about like checking off boxes on a checklist of goodness, as opposed to actually going into the felt experience of what it is to be close to God or in harmony with the world, or whatever you want to call that feeling that I think we're searching for or we're longing when we talk about either religion or poetry or any of these kind of like transcendent authentic experiences. But it's so easy to get caught up in the rules, in checking the boxes, in showing people that you're a good person, as opposed to really, like, Scottie, your whole thing of like just being a good person, not because you will be perceived that way, but because as soon as you kind of drop the pretense of trying to look a certain way, then you actually have a fighting chance of being the kind of person that you actually want to be and that you are.
I don't know if this is just because like it's in my mind at this moment or whatever, but I was working with someone and we were talking about input versus output, right? Input is something that you can control, right? The output a lot of time is dictated by like your environment, what you're in, what you're doing, other people and stuff like that. And so like when I think about like being in your body, like that's the input, like the like what you put in and what you receive, and like you know and the output a lot of times not only is based on who's there and what's going on and stuff like that, it's also the judgment of others. And is that is that worthy?
Yeah.
Right. So like again, I love the poem starts off intense of like you don't have to like begging on your knees, crawling on your knees and do it. That's output. That's something you do that would show something to somebody else of like I'm good or whatever. But what about the input putting in of like how you are as a person and just like how you show up, like just how you show up, not like what you do, but just how you show up in the environment. You know what I mean? And so like for the person I was working with, this kid's a baseball player. And what he's really, because it's a sport and it's statistically, there's things going on, right? There's stats and numbers and things like that. That's the output. But he can say to me out loud and understand it, but it's hard to like cross that barrier of like, he knows that the only thing he can do is control the input, how hard he practices, what he does for his mind state, blah, blah, blah. And then when he gets to where he has to do output, the work's already in. And I think so much, at least in my opinion, we don't put enough input in to be solid around the things we can't control that happen in the output phase. Does that
And by
make
output,
sense?
I think you mean like the results, right?
Yeah, the
'Cause
results. Like,
yeah.
yeah, like you can't. I mean, like a lot of times things go your way like perfectly, right? Like they just go your way. But then there's a lot of times where they just don't. And you can put all the right input in, but that doesn't mean you're going to get, the results or the output that you want. But you can be satisfied by the work you put in, and that can be the reward. So back to, like being a good person, being a good person is what you put in and how you show up. It's not necessarily what you do per se. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because if it's starting from a place of like not good intentions or you're not being a good person, then what's the output's bullshit anyway.
Right. Well, I am curious because like what's coming to mind for me right now as we're talking about this is, for instance, okay, helping someone, like doing something we might call selfless, right? Like volunteering or, seeing someone through a really hard time, helping them out, right? And doing that because you feel like you have to, or it's the right thing to do, or you think you're going to be, you know, you want other people to see you as a good person. Like I've definitely done tons of things like that, right? I've done something difficult, but not because I really wanted to, but more because I felt like guilty or like I had to, or I wanted people to think that I was like really altruistic. And being in my body during those experiences and feeling like really, like it was really unpleasant. I felt really resentful of maybe the person I was helping, or at least resentful of the situation, like the opposite of the soft animal of my body loving what it loves. It was like, no, I don't like this. This doesn't feel right to me. Um, but you know, also like I did probably help some people in that situation, or I did do some good, right? Like the actions, stripped of how I was feeling about it, the actions in and of themselves were maybe helpful, or the other person appreciated it, right? But what, you know, I just, what are your thoughts about that, right? If you are doing something and you're not enjoying it, but it is like objectively helpful, what do you think about that? And do you know what I mean by that? Like if you are helping a friend move, and you're doing, by the way, you're doing like everything in your power to like be a good sport and be pleasant, but inside you're like pissed. Is it still a worthwhile thing to do?
Ooh, I don't know if this is a fair question for me because like I've really gotten to the space that like I'm not gonna do anything that I don't want to do if it has like zero impact really, meaning that like say a friend needs to move and for whatever reason I don't want to help them, like I just tell them no. I mean,
Yeah,
like, and it's not coming from a place of like I don't like you or whatever. I just know myself well enough to know that like I don't want to show up being pissed off at you the whole time that
of
I'm moving your
course.
shit because that's not a good experience for anybody, you know. Now, with that being said, when a person asks me to help them move and I say yes, I make sure that I understand that I'm serving someone else and I'm giving away my time to someone else. And like, if I do that, then my feelings are kind of irrelevant because I've
Mm.
subsided to like, I'm going to help this person. So like, yeah, I could get in an accident on the way over there, and then I move some of their shit, and they ding up my truck, and like there's these things going to happen, and be like, yeah, if I fucking like I shouldn't have done this, but like I always come back to like, no, that you decided that you were going to give this time to serve someone else, and so that time is theirs, and like
Yes.
I don't know if that's like good or bad, but what I do know is when I show up for people, I show up 100%. And if I'm not showing up for you, it's like maybe nothing personal. It's just like I know I'm not going to bring 100%, so I'm not going to give you a half-made sandwich.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you half of my time. I'm going to give you all my time.
Mhm. I
You know
mean,
what I
that's,
mean?
yeah, that's beautiful, right? And it's like, to me, that's like just, that's what comes from uh being a mindful person. And it sounds like having a lot of also lived experience that taught you you don't want to show up with half a sandwich, even if, because we've talked about this before, Scotty. And by the way, just to be I 100% agree with you, right? And if anything, sometimes I feel like I maybe veer, well, no, I veer on both extremes, neither of which are good. Sometimes I veer on being like not involved enough and like a little bit too hermity and saying no to a lot of things. Who's to say that that's right or wrong? But like, you know, I go through phases in life where I feel like I'm um don't feel like I have a high capacity, and I do say no to a lot of things, whether that's yeah, bids to help people, but also maybe like someone wants to hang out or wants to, you know, someone just wants to spend time with me, which I kind of put in the same camp of like, you know, um, even though that is hopefully enjoyable for both people, sometimes it can feel like, depending on how you feel, that can also feel like a little bit of a challenge to like get out of your house and show up if you're really introverted or you're tired or like life's not going well for you. Um, I don't know why I went down that tangent, but right, I think I've definitely erred on the side of being a little bit too like withholding of myself and my time, but I definitely have also overdone it and said yes to too many things, and then felt, even though like this is what's hard, and this is the part that I want to kind of get into. Have you had this experience, Scottie, where you feel overextended, right? Like you know the feeling, right? You said yes, or you said yes when you didn't really want to, and maybe this hasn't happened to you for years because I know you've done so much work around this, but say like, you showed up, you said yes, more because you felt guilty or like you should have, and not, out of like this whole bodied feeling of like, this is my decision. But you can tell that the other person like really appreciates it. Like they seem to be getting something good out of it, but you're over here kind of feeling like grumpy or cranky or cramped, or like you're being taken advantage of maybe. Does that, what do you think about that? You know what I mean? Like the person can't tell that you're not having a good time. Like they just feel appreciative, but you're the one that's feeling, you know, um like you're like, you've been walking around your knees on the desert, as in like you've been doing the thing, but your heart's not in it.
Well, I think that that again, like that doesn't happen too often for me because like when I decide I'm going to show up, like it's how like I show up and things like that. Um, I think what's more I don't know if the word's irritating, but like what's more of a problem for me is when I show up to help you with a positive attitude and your attitude sucks.
Yeah, this has been happening to you a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just talking to my girlfriend about it too, that like, I'm being a little facetious, like I don't have any friends, but like it's almost like misery loves company, and like so when you're miserable, people want to hang out with you if they're miserable kind of thing. But then like, if you show up like all happy and shit, they're kind of like, well, what the fuck? Here comes this guy with his happy bullshit or whatever. And you would think that like that would be enough to influence somebody else because like back to your original question, if I show up and my attitude kind of sucks, but the person I'm helping's attitude's good, a lot of times that's a good reminder for me of why I showed up and
Oh,
what I'm
that's nice.
doing, right? And so then
That's
I
really
go,
nice.
but then okay, we'll take it back to my scenario where like I show up and your attitude sucks, and then it's like, why the fuck am I here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think in those moments, I try to like dig deep and be positive, and I'm sure it's not always received well because again, misery loves company, right? So they want me to be Debbie Downer with them, and I just refuse to. And then I think I don't like, I don't get invited to stuff anymore sometimes. Like I don't because there's a level of like that as humans, like again, back to the poem, it's like you don't have to crawl on your knees to the desert. Like that's not like you don't have to do that. Metaphorically. You don't have to put yourself through like this training and this horrible like, beating yourself up and stuff like that just to get love, just to be inside your body. You can just be inside your body. You can be totally at peace with what you have. And I think sometimes that I've had this thought before about like people that like become drug addicts and like just totally torture themselves and like kill, drugs and blah blah blah, and then they like come out of it and they have this new idea on life. And then you take me that like, my life was pretty great and like maybe my car got wrecked here and I had like I broke up with a girlfriend here, but I never did drugs, never fell off the ledge, but I still suffered the same kind of pain. But a lot
Mhm.
of it was self-inflicted. A lot of it was like
Ooh.
me feeling like I had to suffer to get this. Like we do that a lot in relationships, right? Like we're like, well, you know, I'll put up with him or her yelling at me because I make mistakes too, and this is my punishment, or this makes it even, or whatever. But that's not how a real, true, great relationship works. A real great relationship is a lot of grace, understanding, forgiveness. That's
Mm.
where, you know, that's where a relationship really grows. You don't have to, you know, if you do suffer alone or together, it should be happenstance, and it should be something that is quickly shut down by the grace and the space and the love and the communication that like makes a relationship great.
Mm.
And just being who you are. That's kind of a ramble, but like, you know, I really think that I don't know, like, okay, so you've heard the term there is no life without suffering,
Mhm.
right? But why do we make up suffering? Like, okay, there's going to be suffering already, but some of us create more suffering.
Yes.
Like that's gonna like the more suffering we have, that's gonna get us to heaven, or that the more suffering you have, that's we're gonna be such a great person. And like literally,
Yes.
like there's a lot of really great people, including myself, that didn't have to do a lot of suffering that I think came out like pretty good. And so, why do you think that we put ourselves through intentional suffering when we already have suffering we're gonna experience?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. And I think right at the risk of offending people, which nothing's good if you're not offending someone. But I think going back to the beginning of the poem, right? By the way, Mary Oliver, who is she's a lesbian, she's definitely outside of like the mainstream of culture in a lot of ways, just by being an older lesbian. I mean, that's like in her generation, much more difficult than it is now. But she actually references Jesus, not Christianity per se, but she mentions Jesus and God a lot for someone who clearly is not ascribing to like the mainstream puritanical evangelical Christianity that, um, you know, is a very large presence in our culture, specifically American culture. But she's clearly got like she's not anti she's not anti-Jesus or anti-God. She is clearly actually an incredibly spiritual person and may even be a Christian. I don't know, but her poetry is definitely not atheistic at all. But she is, I think, referencing here, at least I got that she is criticizing religiosity. And by religiosity, that's actually a term that my Christian friend uses to describe the trappings of religion, like the um, more of like the showy offy type of Christianity that is judgmental of others, that criticizes others, that tells other people who is and is not going to heaven based on their identity or their behaviors or whatever, right? We can all kind of picture like the typical like judgmental Christian in America. Um, the thing is, though, whether you're Christian or not, I think Christian values, and by which I mean I'm talking specifically about more of like the puritanical, judgmental Christian values, right? The ones that say like this, and this is getting you into hell. This is getting you into heaven. There's rules. It's not like an intuitive thing. It's like, no, it's written in this book and it will tell you what to do. And this is right and this is wrong. Whether or not you are like in the Judeo-Christian faith or not, those values I think are still very much baked into our culture. So I think we do have a lot of Christian messaging along the lines of like suffer and you'll get into heaven, sacrifice yourself and you'll be rewarded, the meek shall inherit the earth. And some of those things, by the way, I think are just misinterpreted and may in fact be very beautiful ideas, but we certainly misinterpret them to say like if you need to kind of like suffer and debase yourself in order to be rewarded in heaven. And then I think that gets twisted too, in terms of just, even if we're not talking about religion or Christianity per se, we still kind of live under um, this creed of like, you have to suffer and go through years and years of like really, really hard work in order to reap the benefits. Now there's truth to that, right? I don't want to like throw the baby out with the bathwater here, but like what's coming to mind for me, Scottie, is like what people are now calling like the boomer work ethic, like show up at 6 a.m. in the office and like work your way from the bottom to the top, like all these things that we're now kind of realizing maybe aren't as true as we thought, in terms of like, if you suck up to the boss and you like say no to all social obligations and you work yourself to the bone, like then you're going to get ahead. I think there are some myths that we like kind of live in our bones that are still very much present with us, thinking that like if I suffer or if I sacrifice myself or if I do this, somehow somewhere somehow along the way I'm going to be rewarded, whether that's monetarily, or I'm going to get the promotion I want, or just like by nature of suffering, I'm going to get love, or people are going to feel sorry for me, or someone's going to recognize that I'm suffering and I will somehow be rewarded. I think that story is very much part of our collective psyche. Do you agree with that? Do you feel that way?
Yeah. So like while you were talking, I was thinking back to our input and output,
Mhm.
right? Like your life's gonna have suffering. It's part of life. Part of life
Yeah.
is suffering, right? And in somewhere along the way, there was this thought, well, if you input more suffering, then the output and what you get back is going to be greater,
Yes, totally. Yeah.
right? And where maybe sacrifice feels, like the more you sacrifice, sometimes the more the greater, like the things you sacrifice in the moment. But sacrifice also doesn't have to be suffering, right? Like I'm sacrificing watching Netflix to produce a podcast. That doesn't have to be suffering. It could be like
Yes.
something positive, right? And so I think, again, back to the input, my my input never feels like suffering. And I think the main thing is because I know that at some point I'm gonna suffer. And so like I want to be ready with positive input.
Mm.
And I guess you could have the mindset of like, oh, well, if I train myself to suffer, then I can handle suffering better. But like like making yourself suffer doesn't make suffering later on better. It still
Right.
sucks. Like it sucks then.
Totally.
It sucks in the
Totally.
future. Like, so like why would you set yourself up like that? But like I think that unfortunately it's kind of the easy way out. It's the
Yes.
easy process out. If you wanted to get in like a religious that you'd be like it's the devil's mind. Like you're taking the easy road of creating this self-suffering versus like the road of more positive of like could I put all these things in so when suffering happens I'm more prepared.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, and it's the easy way. It's hard and it's easy, right? I
Right,
think
100.
there's like that whole
But
thing of like
you're making it
choose your hard.
hard.
You're
Like
making it hard, but there is an easiness to it, which again, as you were talking, it sparked it for me, which is we can all admit, or at least I'll admit, and then we can see how everyone else feels, and Scottie, how you feel. But I think there is definitely and is self-indulgent kind of sneaky reward that comes from choosing suffering, whether that's feeling bad for yourself, whether that's feeling like a victim or a martyr, whether that's other people feeling sorry for you. Like we get a reward even if it's a crappy reward, but we get a reward from suffering. This reminds me of the courage to be disliked. We don't choose to be unhappy unless we're getting something out of it, right? We don't choose to, right, um, enter into dysfunctional behaviors unless we're getting something out of it, which is so important to remember. There's always going to be what is referred to, I think, in coaching and therapy, it's called secondary gain. Like, just to give listeners an example, like you realize, okay, I always am sick. Why am I always getting sick? And maybe this is a little controversial or woo-woo because you're like, no, if you're physically sick, you're physically sick. But as we know, mind and body, super connected. If you find yourself always getting sick and you feel like, oh God, this is horrible, this is terrible for me. Someone might ask you, someone in this who believes in secondary gain might ask you, okay, but what do you get out of being sick? Like, what are some of the benefits? And at first that person might say like, nothing, you're crazy. There's nothing I get out of being sick. But then kind of on further reflection, you'd say, well, actually, then my partner is always kind of taking care of me. People feel pretty bad for me. If I'm sick, I really don't have to like, get out of my comfort zone. I kind of just get to like stay at home. And there's always like some little benefit, even if it's not what we would call a huge benefit, there's something that you're getting out of it. For me, when I think about suffering, I think when I choose suffering, and it's unnecessary. Like what I get out of that is I kind of get to like lean into the dramatics of suffering. I get to be like, oh my God, my life sucks, poor me. And I do get like a little bit of like I get a little bit of a high off of feeling sorry for myself. And I think we all do that to some degree. But I'm curious if you have that experience, Scottie, of like there is a little bit of like a bump or a high from this, what otherwise seems like a totally pointless thing, which is choosing to suffer.
Well, let me ask you this right quick. Has there ever been a time in which, like, you worried about something so much your stomach hurt, right? Like,
Yes.
like you get physically, right?
Yeah.
And like it confirms that you care. Like in your mind, you're like, oh, I worried so much I got sick. It confirms that like I give a shit.
Mhm.
But does it? Like, can you give a shit without like worrying yourself to fucking death? Like that, like, does it mean, am I worrying any less if I don't get sick to my stomach when like, something tragic happens or something? Like, no, but like, to your point, the suffering means something and,
Yes.
it fulfills something, and it's the process in which you do that. But I think that, those things are probably learned or taught,
Mhm.
or they produce results. Like
Yes.
I worried so much I got sick, but then it turned out okay. Obviously, I had an impact on that. Obviously,
Mhm.
that you didn't,
Yes.
and so, so it's like sometimes it's like, it's like breaking like patterns, like, like
Yes.
like I'm going to reference the begin. I mean, I've read the poem, but the beginning is so impactful. Like essentially, like she's saying, like you don't have to like you don't have to do these things to show that you give a shit.
Yes.
You can just be there. You know what I mean? And I think that that was that was a big changing point for me personally. Is
Mhm.
that like I had to let go of the things I would do to force myself to suffer to mean that I give a shit.
Yeah.
And then surprise, when you make that change, if you've had any interaction with someone like that before, they're going to expect you to do the old pattern, right? Because, you've always done that pattern. And then you're going to have to like set a boundary and go like, I'm not doing this new pattern anymore. And then they're like, you don't really give a shit. And I'm like, oh, actually I do. I actually care more now than I did before because I care about myself and like how I'm
Mm.
showing up and stuff. And I'm caring about you because I actually care. Like I don't
Yeah.
have to like run myself through this gauntlet to show you that like everything's okay or that like I'm good or whatever. And I don't know why we do that. And again, it's probably nature and nurture a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yes. Yes.
but
For sure.
like, you know, to me, that's a really good example of like an unnecessary suffering to get a result or an output that would be the same if you just showed up.
Wow. Wow. I love what you're saying because, especially because I actually am one of those people who
I
gets,
am too, by the way. Yep. I mean, so
right. It's like I get physically nauseous and I have since I was a little kid from emotional things. Like I'm just one of those people that like gets nauseous whenever I'm upset. And um and you even kind of mentioned it, like I was worried sick. Yeah, we can all think of a mother, right, saying like I was worried sick. And yeah, there's some kind of like valor to that of like, look at how much I care, to your point, right? Look at how much I care that I am physically suffering because of how much I care. And that kind of gives you like credit, or people saying, wow, what an empathic person, what a great person. But like, what does you being sick actually do for the situation? Nothing. If anything, it's unhelpful. Like, I think when a mother tells their kid, I was worried sick, that like never makes it, at least that never makes me feel better. It just makes me feel guilty. And then it kind of makes it about you, whoever's sick. Like it kind of takes the attention away. It's just like, it's kind of just more of this, like, it's not helpful,
but
right? Yes, I get
again,
it.
when your mother tells you that she was worried sick,
Yeah.
what is she really telling you? She's telling you, I give a shit,
Yes.
right? But just say that you give a shit. You don't have to say, you
Yeah.
don't tell me about the getting sick part. Like, you know what I mean? And also like, don't get sick to your stomach about it. Just tell me that, like being a parent, like I try to be very aware of those things of like how much of like my own bullshit am I putting on my kid,
Correct. Thank
right?
you.
And like, and I need to not do that. And like I'm just gonna do a little braggadocious real quick.
Please, I love it.
I don't tell my daughter that I'm proud of her.
Hmm.
I tell her that she should be proud of what she's accomplished,
Yeah, I love
right?
that.
Because I can't be proud for, I mean, I can be proud, like proud to be her dad. I tell her that all the time. Hey, I'm proud to be your dad. And she'll say, I'm proud to be your daughter, like, which is
Oh,
really cool, right? But I got her to the space where like I'll say, you should be really proud of what you did. And she'll go, I am. And I'm like,
yes.
you know what I mean? And so like
Yeah.
I to flip the script takes it away. It's not about me. It's not about me. It is about her. And so like I try to use words that are about her when I'm talking about her because, to your point, like my mom used to tell me she was worried sick about me. And
Yeah.
it made me feel guilty.
Guilty, of
You know
course.
what I mean? And then you go nature versus nurture. Did I start doing that because did I start worrying myself sick because I was taught or because it's in my nature? But I mean, it was definitely taught, it was definitely brought up. And so if it was in my nature, it was confirmed by nurture, you
Mm,
know? And so like, but that also happens as an adult in
mm,
relationships. You know what I
mm.
mean? Like your boyfriend goes out for like a long night, then come out 2 in the morning, and you go, I'm worried sick. Well, what are you worried sick about? Are you worried sick about the fact that like he was like out in 2 in the morning, you didn't know what he was doing, or were you worried that he was dead? Because those are two different things.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And like, if you're worried sick about what he's doing and that you don't know, that's more about you. If you're worried about that
Yeah.
he's dead, that's more about him.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? And like, so like what, oh, it comes back to what are your intentions, how you show up and what do you want to be,
Mm.
like really quickly and going back to losing all my friends, like, all these people
Which
that
we
kind of,
need to talk about at some point. We need to put that on the
yeah,
front.
I'm cool. I'll talk about it. But I really think that sometimes when, when they want to have a negative experience with me and I won't participate, it's like, well, I don't want to participate with you because you're not participating in what I want to do. And so then they don't want to be around me. I don't think it's because I'm like this super positive person. I think it's because they want to have an interaction that I'm not willing to do. Like I don't want to dance that. I'm not going to do that dance. I'll do this other dance, but I'm not going to do this because I know that's not healthy for me. And like, that's not a healthy interaction for us. And that's not how I want to show up for another person. So I just kind of have to sit around and wait until someone's ready to like hang out with me in this positive way again, I guess,
Mm. Yeah.
I don't know.
Which, by the way, and that's reminding me, and also just kind of like as we were talking about the whole worried sick thing, you hear a line in the poem, which is, letting the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Like that's all you have to do. I think if you told that maybe to this archetype I have in mind of this, puritanical Christian, I don't know, person, I think they might tell you, there's even a part of me that feels like, well, that's kind of self-indulgent, right? Like what, your whole life is just about making yourself feel happy on a physical level? Like that sounds so like, yeah, self-indulgent, pointless, selfish. But what I think is so cool that you just made me realize, Scottie, is it's also self-indulgent to crawl around your knees on the desert, right? It's the same thing. You're saying like, look at me. I'm suffering. I care so much. I'm such a good person. That's self-indulgent in a way that actually is kind of like sneaky and destructive in a way that just loving what you love and doing what you want to do, provided you're not hurting anyone and it's coming from a grounded place, is actually doing more good, even though on the outset it sounds more selfish, which I think is cool.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever whatever input you put in and then what you do is on you.
Mm,
And so, it all comes back to who do you want to be and how do you want to show up?
mm,
You know what I mean? And so if you wanted to be a person that like internally wants to like totally torture yourself, I mean, I guess that's like fine. So that, but like that's not what that's someone else's burden to carry. and like they don't need to know about it. You know what I mean? Like my favorite like sports stories are stories that you hear when you see someone that's accomplished all this great stuff, but you didn't know that their childhood sucked.
Mhm.
And it's almost like, like they were going to do the sports story on him. He's almost reluctant to tell the story because he's like, that's not the story. The story is who I am now. And that story is not like all this horrible crap that happened to me,
Mhm.
and you find out that like, wow, this person, I thought that their life just went swimmingly, like had like tough shit, but they decided not to make that the focal point. Their suffering wasn't the focal point. The focal point is what the input they put in and then how they handled it externally, you
Mhm.
know? Like I was kind of reading in the later part of this poem where it was talking about like where is it at? Tell me about your despair and I'll tell you about mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We can sit and match horrible stories all day long and I could tell you how like I suffered, but like really like nobody wants to hear that shit. Like they want to hear like how you succeeded. Like and they want the positive aspect of it, And so I think sometimes like public suffering or like getting so sick that getting so worried that you're sick, um it's telling about your intentions. I don't know, maybe that's judgmental. Okay, let me ask you this because I'm kind of curious. How often, like in a therapy session between couples, do you see this kind of like go down? Like one is talking of this incredible suffering they're doing for the other, and the other can't recognize that like they're suffering for them, and I didn't ask for that, or you know what I mean? There's this like there's someone always like paying in a debt forward so that they can get grace on the back end, which is not how that works. Like, do you see that in couples therapy a lot?
Oh yeah. I for sure. I'd say that's definitely especially true of the couples who are in the highest amount of distress. Couples who are having the hardest time are often fighting back and forth about who has suffered more. That's like one of the biggest things. It's like, oh, you think that you've like suffered for this relationship or that you're having trouble. Look at what I've had to go through. And I'd say that's a sign that you're really in high conflict and are struggling a lot. So that's very common. I'd say that's definitely at the root of a lot of like heavy distress, pretty
How
much.
much do you think we create our own high conflict?
I mean, 100% we do, but I don't think we do it intentionally.
Yeah, like
It's definitely us, right? And I think but it is to this point that we've sort of talked about here, and of course, we've talked about in previous episodes. You might not believe that you choose to suffer or choose to feel bad, but you are choosing to. Now, that's not saying that you're bad or an idiot or any of these things. We all do that. We all choose how we feel. Now, how much we are able to control that comes with time, practice, wisdom, inquiry, a lot of practice, honestly, right? Choosing, like, I can certainly feel this moment, right? Where I'm arguing with my partner and I used to not feel the choice, but now because I've done so much work on myself and my relationship, I can see, I'm like, oh man, I can see the choice to like double down, play victim, um, get incredibly offended by this thing. Like I can do that. And it's so tempting. It's so tempting. Like almost all of my body wants to do that. But then I can also see the choice to like take a deep breath, ask for 5 minutes, like let it settle, and then come back and actually try to understand that we're basically on the same team here. There is a choice there. It's just that our ability to see that choice only comes with a lot of work and awareness,
so
if
you
that makes
you, you
sense.
kind of led into what I wanted to ask, and we'll wrap it up with this. How much how much do you think the level of awareness that you create and choose to have impacts the choices that you choose a bad suffering? I didn't word that very well. Um, I feel like when people are doing a lot of suffering, they have little awareness about the overall picture and idea. Like what you described to me is like you described this moment where you have this awareness of making a choice.
Mhm.
And so I guess I'm asking, like what are your thoughts of like the impact of awareness on suffering?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, it gets us pretty far. I don't think it gets us all the way, though. I think there is something about when I say practice, and I'm not just trying to cheesily bring this full circle, but it's actually true. Um, you have to learn in your body. It's not just being cognitively aware that you're doing something self-destructive. I think like most alcoholics, well, I shouldn't say that. I think a lot of alcoholics know that when they reach for the first drink, they're making the wrong choice. Like I think most of them know that, right? I think they're like, you know what? Obviously, like if they were to sit there and say, to be aware, they would say, yeah, having the first drink, this is a bad idea. Knowing that doesn't necessarily, I mean, it's important. You certainly need that. You need that. That's like step one. That's a very important step to have the awareness, to know that, oh, I'm feeling bad and I'm choosing this drink to deal with it. I think that's awareness is super important, but it definitely doesn't get you to stop drinking, because think about how many people know that they're alcoholics but struggle to quit. There's something else, right? And I don't claim to have the answers, especially because, I don't have the felt experience of struggling with a severe chemical dependency. Like I don't know what that feels like. What I do know is that any kind of change has to be felt, not just mentally, it has to be deep in the body. Like any habit, like, because we're not just these brain creatures, we're these body creatures, right? I mean, think about, you know, how much work it takes to build a habit, but then that habit is just so automatic that it's in your body, right? Um, so having the awareness is the first step, but then you have to practice over and over and over again the visceral, physical, embodied experience of, in this example, turning away from the drink, going and sitting down, feeling everything that's in your body, feeling how fucking uncomfortable that is. And you have to do that so many times. I mean, and then we could get into like the science of habits, right? It takes at least 30 days of consecutive behavior to build a habit. So there's also just this like totally physical, soft animal element, I think, of anything that can't be overstated.
I think also just drop this in. That's why meditation or just like, time sitting or like, just being with yourself is so important
Mm.
so that you can notice your body, right? Like for me personally, like I have this kind of whole like yoga routine that I do, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like a lot of times, like when I'm inside that, that's when I'm really noticing things about my body and about like what I think and what's going on. Like it's a lot of like processing, but it's really it comes down to just time with myself. It's just time with me and my body, and I'm foam rolling and stretching, right? But you could do that sitting as well, and I think that brings about not only the awareness of your mind but your body, right? And then when you get caught in these situations to make poor decisions that might induce suffering or more suffering, you're slow enough that you can go, well, like now what I have a choice. Like, like and again, it's like back to you said, it's choosing to be happy or choosing to be sad. But I think that for most people it happens so fast because of the lack of awareness and
Oh,
presence
yeah.
in their body that it doesn't feel like a choice. It just feels
Oh,
like, oh, this
totally.
is just what it is. I gotta fucking blow up because like this is what I do. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And like, you know, I get like I'm not being silly, but like a geese doesn't go through all that. Like I don't
No.
think, like probably, you know what I
No.
mean? Like
No.
and like, a geese is such an interesting animal to pick. Like it's so like it feels so random, but at the
And they
same
honk.
time, it's the same as all of them. Like it's not random, it's the same. You know what I mean? And on some level, we are the same, like as humans, as animals, right?
For sure. Yeah. And let me say too, I mean, I'm hopefully people are assuming best intent. When I say that it's a choice, right? A choice to be happy or unhappy, by no means am I saying it's a simple choice, a clear choice, an easy choice, an automatic choice. Like the, oh my God, right? I mean, the most like stereotypically unhelpful thing to say is just like, dude, just like be happy.
Snap out of it.
As if I haven't dedicated my entire life not just to helping other people do that very fucking hard thing, but I also every day struggle with doing that myself. So it's a choice, but it's certainly not easy. That's why there's poems about it, right? It's like
Well, even like, like even when I go through a kind of depressed episode, I have enough awareness to go like that I'm choosing it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Now, it doesn't just like shift. I don't go, oh, like you're choosing to be depressed, so like I'm going to choose not to. But the awareness that I'm making a choice starts the stepping process to making a different choice. Like once I'm aware of it, like, and I'm, I think I don't know. I was watching something and they were like, what's your word of the year going to be or something like that. And I think, it probably was last year and it'd probably be this year. It's like awareness. Self-awareness is like, I mean, it's the one thing that you can do that no one can do for you, that's totally free, that brings you the greatest freedom and like greatest, space to make choices and make your life good. But like we just choose everything. We do choose to do everything, but like we'll get on our phones, we'll watch TV, we'll go hang out with friends, we'll drink alcohol, we'll do drugs, we will do anything but try to bring awareness to shit. And like, like, I think finding ways to kind of sit with yourself and be okay with that allows you to be okay with others too, Well, if you have anything that's mixtape therapy for you, make sure you let us know. You can write in the comments. Hannah, is always, thank you so much.
What a pleasure.
And we'll see y'all guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.